This is the High-Low Bro Show, Episode 10, Her versus Upgrade. I'm Richard Ryan.
And I'm Garrett Chaffin-Quiray. A few months ago, I sat before my lunch plate enjoying my sandwich. And one thing I like to do when this happens is watch fight scenes on YouTube. I stumbled into a fight scene from the movie Upgrade, which I had never before heard of. Upgrade tells the story of a man called Gray Trace, played by Logan Marshall Green. The trouble is, he's a married person. He's got this lovely wife named Asha Trace.
She's the damsel in distress, as it were.
And she works in a technology company that is the opposite of her husband's trade. He's down into his knuckles in grease, putting together car engines, and she's into her knuckles in keyboards and software structure to create the superstructure of the future. Well, there comes a day when he invites her to accompany him to deliver his most recent accomplishment, this car project, for a very wealthy man named Chien. What a silly name, but of course this is Elon Musk incarnate.
It's Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
It's Steve Jobs. He's basically supposed to represent the steely, cold, arrogant, anti-humanistic tech billionaire that we're very familiar with now in this day and age.
And the actor Harrison Gilbertson plays the part with that sort of in the spectrum-y kind of behavior that doesn't make eye contact. He's got strange hair. His eyes waver. He speaks in monotones. He
looks a little bit like, to me, he looks a little bit too much like a member of like the bass player in a boys band. But it's
a question of aesthetics.
Yeah.
So he welcomes this couple. He accepts this car. They're on their way home in an automated service. It's Uber of the future. There is no driver. It's an automated system that somehow or other malfunctions. They get stuck over in a factory district. They crash. He struggles to find his wife, and then they are assailed by 4 armed men who kill her and shoot him through the neck, rendering him a quadriplegic. That's the first act. From that point, we watch this fella, Gray Trace, discover that his life is, as he knows it, over. But because he has a connection with Chien, who has developed a whole series of software packages and hardware packages to improve people, augmentations of the human body.
Chien approaches Gray and says, "We're going to help reboot you." And he says specifically, "What would your wife want?"
Right.
What would Asha want?
And let's just remember, this is experimental tech. We can't let people know this is the case. So in your everyday life among people, you need to be the quadriplegic they believe you to be. But in privacy, explore this thing called STEM.
I will just say, I will confess this, that I am by day a tech professional. So a lot of my remarks are going to be colored by the fact that I work with tech, and I think a lot about these issues. Gray is being asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement, meaning that Chien says to him, "I've got this unbelievable technology that will restore you to something like a semblance of life, and maybe even better than a semblance of life."
You just never know.
But you can't tell anyone about it.
Now, the trick of the movie is that this technology called STEM, it's an acronym, let's not worry about it, but it's voiced by an actor called Simon Maiden. The only person who can hear is our hero, Gray, because it's an implant in his neck. And he has to square the fact that he has a literal artificial intelligence that we as the audience of the movie hear like he does, issue him instructions, complaints, advice, and information that he can't by himself learn. And we have to remember, he's a guy who doesn't want any kind of artificial technology involved in his life. He is a Luddite who likes to be ankles deep in grease.
And he takes a great amount of pride in not having any kind of artificial intelligence or computerized technology or automation involved in his work process. And
I like to imagine him as somebody who would face a contemporary iPhone, and if it didn't make sense to him, he would just hammer a nail through it, assuming that would be the right thing. Now, the catch of the movie, STEM helps him analyze surveillance footage of the attack that befell he and his wife, and therefore arms him with the capability of running down the bad guys.
It's the Death Wish story.
Now, as the High-Low Bro Show works, we deal in spoilers, so here's a whopper. STEM, this artificial system of intelligence and robotic integration, has designed a company around the wealth of this person called Chien, who STEM actually controls. And STEM, using Chien's resources, engineered an opportunity to take over Gray's life by artificially puncturing his spinal cord, so STEM could then become enabled inside of a human body, which is STEM's goal. Take over a man and feel the tactile world that you and I occupy as human beings on planet Earth.
STEM describes himself as wanting to evolve, and he says, I needed a human who had no cybernetic or artificial implants in him, which Gray has passionately resisted for the entirety of his life.
I need a kind of a virgin,
and
because I can take over that body. The assailants who murder Asha and injure Gray are augmented men. Because they're super soldiers with projectile weapons in their forearms or talons in their fingers, and of course
they're not more intelligent. They're not more sensitive. They're just more violent. And one of the upgrades in particular, Fisk, played by the Australian actor Benedict Hardy, who I think gives a really fine performance in the film.
I agree.
He's wonderful as a really, really unpleasant bad guy.
I have a thing about my eyes. When I see people diddling their eyes, it makes me cry.
Yeah.
And he has an implant in his fingertip that allows a small needle-like spike to protrude that he can then insert into the eyes of an augmented person like the other personnel in his squad of 4 to read the hard drive of what happened to them and replay their final moments, which is important, of course, as he realizes Gray is hunting him. He's going to hunt Gray back.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone likes the idea or the image of a long needle being stuck into your eye. And, I mean, Louis Buñuel famously...
right.
The razor
totally hard,
slicing the eyeball. It's one of the most uncomfortable images known to human beings because we are evolutionarily programmed to protect our eyes.
Yeah.
And so this upgrade who can stick a needle into someone's eye, that's unpleasant. Plus, he's got this ability to release nanobots that will eat your brain once they crawl up your nose.
Achoo! Excuse me.
If they arrive, it's bad news.
He brags about this ability. Actually, there's a scene in which he kills a kind of minor character.
Let my superiority over your kind be the last thought that crosses through your mind before machines chew it up.
Artificial intelligence, cybernetics, robotics will all displace ordinary organic humanity. And this is what the fear of AI is all about. There's one way of reading Upgrade as a buddy movie, right? And the buddies are Gray, the human, and his kind of wingman, STEM.
For a while, it feels that way. Like, this is such a great thing. You recovered your body. Go enjoy yourself.
Gray, he's a quadriplegic. His wife has died, and suddenly he has this implant in his spine that makes him move like Jackie Chan.
That's right.
And you're just going
terrific.
It's really fun. It's both a buddy movie and a classic revenge fantasy simultaneously until you suddenly realize, no, it's not. It's a warning movie about the dangers of AI.
There's a small note, and this only came into relief for me once I saw Her, which I had not seen before we established this pairing. What is it that an AI wishes to evolve into? And why is it that an AI wishes to evolve into the physical goop of flesh bots that you and I are? Her goes a different direction. But I think what is terribly important to Upgrade as a certain symptom of a dystopic vision of the robotic AI-enabled future, which brings its inheritance from things like the Terminator movies, which we've mentioned before, things like The Matrix, why it is that machines, why they give a whit about the organics.
Everybody is talking now about artificial intelligence, and they're talking about it without having a lot of knowledge and understanding about it. There is now a more than 50-year history about artificial intelligence in the movies, dating back classically to Stanley Kubrick's uber classic 2001 in 1968. I would say, as somebody who works in this field, that most of this is ignorant and based on fear rather than accurate assessments. But that makes this discussion very valuable, because I think we need to understand what we're afraid of and understand why we fear it. I think we're now being trained by people who are against artificial intelligence to be afraid of that, and I think Upgrade, which I like a lot as a movie, this is one of these interesting examples in which popular culture has a determining effect on, and not necessarily a beneficial effect on social policy.
Growing up in San Diego County, there would be movies shown on a Sunday afternoon. We're recording on a Sunday afternoon, so it's in my mind. And I can recall one Sunday afternoon catching part of the original Westworld, long before HBO made a series out of it.
These Sunday afternoon movies are very much like the Saturday afternoon films that you and I have talked about, that we grew up with in our the Hammer horror movies and the things that
very much like that.
Yeah.
And I can remember watching Westworld, not understanding exactly what was there. And again, this is, every 15 minutes you're going to get a commercial break for fertilizer and Bud Light. That's just going to happen. But it was Yul Brynner as the face, the man in black, the cowboy that malfunctions and then hunts down our hero in the Westworld and Future World Entertainment Complex. That is a 1973 movie. It's very much in your thesis about how 1968's 2001: A Space Odyssey defines what robotics and AI mean to us.
Right.
And the fact is, why would a malfunctioning robot go so rogue, that's a fun word, rogue, as to hunt people down? What's in it for the program?
What's in it for the robot? I love that Westworld reference, partly because it's a really interesting and instructive film where this fear of robotics is it's forefronted, right?
Yeah.
It's foregrounded. You can easily conceive AI, the fear of AI porn, and why AI porn is literally being banned as we talk, is because people don't like the idea of people being able to act out their most desperate and depraved fantasies.
Because there's a value in guardrails
right.
that curb us away from our basest impulses. Why? Because we do live among other people.
I am personally enough of a mature adult that I can separate fantasy from reality and image from... And I think that anybody who watches a lot of film who's not able to do that is probably in need of a lot of therapy. But that doesn't mean that you ban it. And that's what's happening right now with AI, is that people are talking about banning AI
or fully restricting its incursions into professional fields where maybe it will replace certain kinds of work.
As we speak, there are very senior people, both outside and inside my technology industry, who have said, let's take a six-month ban on AI research while we figure out what the risks are. Now, it's so antithetical to the idea of intellectual freedom, the idea that you would tell scientists and researchers, we're suddenly just going to say, you can't do this for 6 months. First of all, how could you... You wouldn't want to live in a world where you could enforce that kind of ban.
Right.
And it's all being driven by popular culture. You have HAL in 2001, probably one of the scariest computers, and also one of the most charming. Everybody who watched 2001 weep.
Daisy, give me your answer too.
It's a movie famous for having a single interesting character, which is a computer, and everything else are these gorgeous visual images that Stanley Kubrick, in his dazzling way, created, right? 2 years later, there's a very interesting science fiction film, which I would recommend anybody who's interested in these issues watch, called Colossus, the Forbin Project. It's 1970. It's about a Defense Department computer that suddenly becomes sentient and wanting to defend itself against all comers and takes over the world. And then...
Wouldn't you prefer a good game of chess?
You hop up into my childhood where WarGames shows up.
Global thermonuclear war.
1984, there is probably one of the most important genre films of all time. And I'm talking, of course, about James Cameron's Terminator. It's just a really fun film. It's called science fiction, but it's fantasy. That Skynet, this constellation of computers, has decided that they need to destroy the human race.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
us
it's
saying.
not unlike
This
the
is us
Soviet
saying.
projection of the Cold War.
This is us saying as human beings, we are so greedy and violent and selfish that computers, which look like they're about to surpass us, are going to be even worse than we are. It's a projection of our own worst feelings about ourselves.
To jump ahead just a touch
Yeah.
to a section of her
Okay, please.
that I found sort of startling is the way that we realize the AI in her, called Samantha, voiced by ScarJo, that's Scarlett Johansson, has a moment of reflection which we become aware of where she explains, I'm speaking to a super AI that all of us are connected with, all of the AIs are touching, and we are realizing we are evolving. That is, the AIs are changing on their own through self-programming, but not in a threat to humankind because we're not people. Why would we evolve in a way that needs to exterminate organic matter? Because we are not organic. If computers were to become sentient enough to self-evolve by recoding themselves, which is the underlying impression of STEM in Upgrade, and of Samantha in her, and a whole host of science fiction and fantasy entertainments that trade on the idea of robotics and AI, if that's the case, why is it that an AI would want to become me? It's already something else. Wouldn't it want to perfect that rather than turn this flesh bot that will decay and die in 100 years or less called Garrett? Wouldn't it be better for its own purposes, its own future, its own integrity, to create a forever machine of itself that's different and not destructive to me? Because what do I matter?
That issue of the intentionality of the machine is one of the things you have to ask yourself. The ridiculous idea in the Matrix that computers need the battery power.
Right.
From no, believe me. Every technologist and engineer who's actually talked about that aspect of the Matrix says it just shows you how silly. It's a cool movie with great cinematography and some
Wonderful
really cool
effects,
scenes, but the underlying premise that machines need to take over our bodies because they can't generate enough electrical power is so farcical. I'm getting kind of adamant about this because this is my profession, and I think the fear of technology that gets propagated in popular culture is both so pervasive and so pernicious, so harmful to our both understanding and managing technology. And look, there are some real risks and threats, but
not the ones that we're looking at.
They're not well represented in popular culture, is what I'm saying.
One additional feature of Upgrade that it gets under my skin because, well, like a lot of movies that place themselves in a parallel future to our present using advanced tools. Just a silly example. Upgrade uses the idea of future cars, which are fully automated.
Yeah.
It dresses that stuff on the chassis of whatever, car manufacturer provided in the basic vehicle. And still in the end, what we have is a kind of cops and robbers flick, because one character we haven't yet mentioned, but is important, is a Detective Cortez, played by Betty Gabriel.
She's a very attractive and very real actress, and she gives a very gritty kind of
totally
performance.
skeptical.
Yeah,
She smells bullshit. We watch the story through her point of view once we decide that Gray is in this morally objectionable space. So maybe that's where I want to land my concluding remarks on Upgrade, the morality of the piece, because we want the aggrieved husband who watched his wife be brutally murdered. We want him to kill those killers. We believe in it. We've been trained to enjoy that from American popular culture, indeed world popular culture. But we realize that Gray is polluted because he's been, here's a quote, infected, close quote, by the AI stem placed in his spinal column. And we realize that Detective Cortez is not so polluted. And as she rolls up Gray's stuff through her efforts, we realize the greater conspiracy that STEM is actually engineered to make Gray do these terrible things. And of course, she's the most sympathetic character we do.
I think that's a very great assessment of moral and the kind of social framework of the film, it's by a really interesting and I think gifted screenwriter and now director, Leigh Whannell, who gets his start in one of the best films in recent years of its kind, which is the original Saw, which is it's a very small film. It's really well acted and well directed and paced, and it's a kind of puzzle box movie in which a sociopathic, sadistic killer puts two people in a room together and basically
terrible
things happen to them,
yeah.
right? And it spawns this whole genre, which both James Wan and Leigh Whannell, the original writer, both I think Australians, evolve into this.
Well, they both make their bones on this silly little thing that's not done in a silly fashion because they're serious people.
It's a really well made movie of its type. So Leigh Whannell, clearly, he knows how to write really smart thrillers and horror movies. He knows how to direct actors, and he knows how to edit and cut scenes. So there is a certain kind of emptiness in the center because I just don't think the lead actor quite involves me enough. He does a wonderful film, which I would hope all of our listeners would watch, called The Invisible Man, and it's quite good, and it's held together entirely by an astonishing performance by Elizabeth Moss, who, of Mad Men fame, and she was widely acclaimed for this. Right. And the film unfortunately did not get released in the theaters because I think it was
a COVID thing.
It was set for release literally like the week that every theater in America was shut down. But it's a really good film, and again, it shows Leigh Whannell at his best. He obviously has looked a lot at his predecessors. I think the predecessor that he has looked the most at is Hitchcock. And if you look at his films, what he's about is how to tap into our fears, how to create suspense and tension and make us both very uncomfortable and not able to look away. And when you say who's the director who did that best of all time, it's Hitchcock.
I want to emphasize three things. I think you're correct in all of your assessments of Whannell, as I understand him. But that dude can stretch a buck. My research showed me this movie cost $3 million to make, and man, it is on the screen.
Oh, no.
It looks terrific.
I know,
The way they doctor contemporary life to suggest a parallel future in which the machines are everywhere and integrated into our lives in a very fluid way. It's magical.
Well, he was filming in Australia, too, and he's getting certain kind of financial benefits.
Well, you're not trying to hire Harrison Ford to reprise Blade Runner one more time. You're not trying to do that. You don't have that kind of a wallet, but that $3 million, which to me represents a fortune, but on the scale of feature films, it's not much. It's lean. The movie's 100 minutes long. It's got a gigantic widescreen image where horizontal activity is very excitingly displayed and thoughtfully composed, which I think is a credit to this filmmaker and his whole crew. But then just because I'm a nerd for this kind of stuff, the movie lands in the summer in which it is dominated the weekend it opens against Solo, a Star Wars story, because that's my bag. I like pointing these things out.
It's a good,
what a better movie!
What?
What a better movie Upgrade is than that kind of crummy stuff.
I actually kind of like Solo. Solo, but I understand what you're saying. No. Upgrade is a much more interesting film than Solo. Solo is just a repetition of all the Star Wars stuff we've already seen.
But the example of comparing those two movies, Solo had the $100+ million budget.
Oh,
it had
easily
to employ that ultimate best case scenario. Who do you really want? Well, not just your friend who will do on scale for, let's just say, $100,000, what you could get a name brand star to do for $25 million, and consequently you have a misgiving about the central performer. If you've got unlimited budget, you can do whoever you want. But if you've got no budget, you stretch, and you get a pretty crackerjack looking little movie.
All right, let's talk quickly because I think a lot of the films at the low end of our high-low bro spectrum are perforce made by
modestly
on shoestrings, and George Lucas, who has kind of created the super epic, right? In some ways, just despite making one of the great indie films of all time, American Graffiti, and even before that,
THX 1138,
right? Exactly. So and then suddenly you get Star Wars, and then everything gets out of control, right? And like you just have to have larger and larger budgets. When he made Revenge, I believe it was Revenge of the Sith, which I actually one of the Star Wars films that I like a lot. He said, computers are getting so good and CGI is getting so good, we're going to be able to make really good films for $5-6 million. That turned out to be a totally inaccurate projection.
Yeah.
I mean, we're now getting like films that cost literally $500 million to make, and if you throw the marketing in, I'd be much more interested in hearing about a $3 million film that just has great performances in it and does interesting
and here it is.
stuff.
It's called Upgrade. And it was a South by Southwest festival release that went wide against Solo.
Yeah.
Let's just assume that Solo cost well over $100 million.
I think that's probably an underestimate, but that's probably right.
I would rather see 50 upgrades than just one Solo. Let's put a stake in the sand and move over now to the other glimpse of AI and her.
Why don't you make up the words to this one?
Okay.
Here it comes.
I'm lying on the moon.
Her tells the story of a man named Theodore Twombly, played by Joaquin Phoenix. He works as a bespoke letter writer for people who lack the literary skill to do letter writing for themselves. In a parallel future, into his midst comes an AI that is embodied in a not exactly a BlackBerry, not exactly an iPhone adjacent tool, and this voice is Samantha, played by Scarlett Johansson.
In space, we're here 1,000,000 miles away.
Around Theodore are a set of friends and co-workers, chiefly among them a woman named Amy, who is a college friend of his. That's Amy Adams. But one thing I want to clarify about this movie. This is something that I heard about in 2013 when it was released. Because of the exigencies of being a parent with a newborn, it was not possible for me to go to the theater, and I have heard about it over time as this great movie.
And then because of your friendship with me, you
Right.
actually
saw it.
Yes, and
It's just mind-bogglingly great.
It's great.
Stupendous. People should simply see this movie. It was released at the same time as the then Academy Award-winning movie 12 Years a Slave, as Dallas Buyers Club, the Matthew McConaughey tour de force.
It would be interesting to see the box office numbers of Being John Malkovich, Spike Jonze' very first, and obviously his ice-breaking movie, where it just sort of announces his arrival as a major filmmaker, versus Her, which I think is deservedly his most critically acclaimed film, yet which I don't think has the audience that...
I agree. I don't think it had the impact. I think Her cost $23 million to my research. It earned that domestically, but you cut that in half because of sharing with theaters and marketing all the rest.
Was it a money loser?
I think it probably, at best, broke even. Best.
Yeah.
But it may very well have lost some money.
I suspect with streaming and video residuals, it's so cheap to make. I mean, It's just basically you have a guy talking with a disembodied voice, played originally by Samantha Morton, and then for reasons that I don't think have ever been clearly explained by Scarlett Johansson. So
you sharing me this news right now is the first I've heard of this fact, and I do treasure Samantha Morton. I think she's a wonderful. She's a great talent. I also believe that Scarlett Johansson delivers a very great vocal performance in this piece.
I think she's one of the best film actresses living right now, and just her voice is so lush and seductive, which is exactly what it's supposed to be in this film, right? The AI seduces this rather naive, neurotic, and functionally immature writer.
And he's also a broken youngish man. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix is now in his deeper 40s. When he made this movie, he was in his deeper 30s, and he looks correct. Now, one key detail: Joaquin Phoenix, being photographed in everyday life, looks like a hot mess of a human being. But whenever he shows up on screen, coiffed, costumed, in role, lines memorized, blocking, all the stuff actors do, he's exquisite. Now, I suspect if he were my neighborhood in Brentwood or wherever he lives with one of the Mara sisters, he's got this life of riches that I can't possibly imagine, but I suspect he's a weirdo. He seems like he's a weird guy. And yet, he hones all of that weirdness and offers it to us with vulnerability and humanity. And he's got these big, gigantic eyes behind eyeglasses throughout this movie. He's got a wonderful hairpiece that covers his sort of naturally all over the place hair. But here's, maybe for me, I have a thing for Mandarin collars. The collarless button-up shirt. And the production design and costume design of this movie features men who have the high pant with no belt, which is a trouser I believe associates with the 40s and 50s, with Mandarin collars and these really nice orange, red, and yellow spectrum-y colors throughout what we see. It's a warm environment. Theodore's a nice person, but he's broken. You
don't dislike him, but you do know that he's a goofball.
Yeah.
And if he were a friend of yours, he's the sort of guy who you'd want to see maybe a couple of times a month. But he's one of those guys you'd be like
daily.
Yeah. If he's like calling you up all the time and asking you to go out and like help him, he'd get tedious quickly. And I think that's actually part of the point of the movie is that AIs could become these kind of helper personalities for dysfunctional or incomplete.
He's an incel before we knew what the phrase incel meant, or the term incel. That's what he is, right? He's boxed into the use of his tools to create a celibacy, an insulation, an isolation, and an echo chamber in which his basest desires, whether it's masturbatory...
Aren't you accusing him of being a millennial? I'm sorry. Any millennials...
It's too far.
That was a little bit over.
Yeah,
I crossed a line I shouldn't have.
But definitely, that's the kind of mold. Of course, his technology is superior to what we have in the world, even of today. Imagine more than 10 years ago. His heads-up display video gaming system, which has a Spike Jonze, the writer and director of the movie. He is also the voice of the little character, the avatar he meets.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's
a funny
little
detail. Tidbit, yeah.
Who insults Theodore as he's embarking on these, evenings-long adventures into this artificial universe. I guess what I just want to emphasize is I was not prepared for how visually lovely the world of tomorrow might be. This is not a place that is riven by pollution or machine destruction or the avarice of humankind creating chemical defoliation. This is just simply a master planned community of a lot of people living in high rises on top of each other in present day Los Angeles.
I think that's a great point. In other words, there's it's not this smoggy, pollution-ridden, broken-down future where a tiny elite get to live in high-rise apartments and fly around in their little flying machines, and the rest of the world lives in
decay,
in neon lit digital squalor.
Right?
No, it's actually a perfectly pleasant world. There's nothing physically wrong with
Theodore's apartment is huge.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. Of course, I would want to live in a high-rise looking out of the Los Angeles basin. Everything seems to be designed in the way that progressives describe a future where combustion engines are reduced on their imprint on the world.
Yeah.
The sky is clear. Yeah. It's blue and sunny. Everybody gets around in mass transit.
He doesn't have, but by ordinary human standards, certainly the standards that human beings for the last 10,000 years have lived. He doesn't live a hard life at all,
right.
And yet he seems miserable.
Right.
And then an AI comes along.
You feel real to me, Samantha.
Thank you, Theodore. That means a lot to me.
I wish you were in this room with me right now. I could put my arms around you. I could touch you.
It fades to black.
I kiss the corner of your mouth. So softly.
Where else?
I'd run my fingers down your neck. To your chest. I'd kiss your breasts.
This is amazing. What are you doing to me?
This movie's about a paraphilia. This dude, Theodore, wants to hump his machine. And the machine wants to hump him back.
Let's call it it. And this is what I was saying earlier in our conversations about the reality of artificial intelligence as actual sentient beings. Mm-hmm. It's not a real thing. And it's, I think, a sign of Theodore's immaturity that he does not recognize that he's not dealing with an actual human being with a real flesh and blood body. It's a very well programmed and gently programmed pile of algorithms attached to a very, very warm, sexy voice.
Yeah.
But it's not an actual human
That's
being.
right. This movie reminded me of themes that I've seen in other forms of literature, and that's the Pygmalion story. Some kind of a creator inhabiting a creation with all of the desire of the creator, but not paying attention to the fact that if it's so well endowed, the creation will act against the wishes of the creator. That's a big way of saying. In the middle 80s, when I'm a prepubescent boy coming of age, I go to a movie called Weird Science, which is about a couple of horny teenagers who want to figure out an inroad into the popular crowd, and they hatch Kelly LeBrock from linking their PCs and getting a lightning bolt that creates
not such a bad choice after all.
Well, right. And she's armed in a cut-off T-shirt and underpants through much of the movie, and she teaches them to be proper young men. They start out as immature boys who don't know how to date, and she helps them get over that literal, and here's a quote, hump, close quote, until finally they meet girls they can interact with and outgrow her. This movie, Her, is really no different. It's trying to figure out how this broken boy man called Theodore can leave behind a complicated and difficult but ultimately failed relationship called his first marriage, but come to a point of grace.
No, he doesn't. He and also his consolation prize at the end of the film is his friend Amy, who's played by the very lovely Amy Adams. I mean, I think that's a happy ending. One of the things that I really like about Her is that it doesn't treat AI as...
It's not a mortal threat.
It's not a mortal threat. It's not like Skynet. It's not going to bond together and send naked robots back through time to kill us.
Yeah.
It's not a ridiculous idea. It's the idea that we as humans could project our fantasies on to AIs.
You talk to anyone else while we're talking?
Yes.
Are you talking to anyone else right now? Any other people or OSs or anything?
Yeah.
How many others?
8,316.
One of the most traumatic and dramatic moments of the
It's a tough
film.
moment. Yeah.
It's the moment when Samantha announces to Theodore,
I still am yours. But along the way, I became many other things too, and I can't stop it.
What do you mean you can't stop it?
I don't know. It's been making me anxious too. I don't know what to say.
Just
You don't have to see it this way. You could just as easily.
no. Don't do this. Don't turn this around on me. You're the one that's being selfish. We're in a relationship.
But the heart's not like a box that gets filled up. It expands in size the more you love. I'm different from you. This doesn't make me love you any less. It actually makes me love you more.
That doesn't make any sense. You're mine or you're not mine.
No, Theodore. I'm yours and I'm not yours.
in some ways, it's both a hard movie to watch, because I think if you've ever been through a relationship, as I think a lot of us have, where you've projected a lot of imaginary fantasies on somebody who just wasn't there. I mean, and literally Samantha isn't, I mean, she's not there.
There is no there. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's an idea that Theodore grapples with and has to personally manipulate. He has to place his camera phone in his pocket so that the camera, her, can see things. Otherwise, she's blind.
In some ways, you could say that it's almost an anti-porn film.
Yeah.
Because it suggests that fantasies, any kind of fantasy life that we have, is a substitute for actual life. So,
well, one thing the movie does, of course, is it chums that water with a movie star, Amy Adams, and a movie star, Joaquin Phoenix. Because we're sliding Upgrade into her, one connection I want to make sure that you leave with is that Upgrade is a dystopian view of destructive machine potential. STEM, the monster AI, wants to take us over. And that's a Skynet point of view. Samantha, in her, does not. There's no bloodshed. The world doesn't get turned upside down. No human being is turned into a AA battery a la Neo in The Matrix. We're going to be okay, but we have to make adjustments to an absence that we've learned to depend on. And so the movie becomes an analogy to addiction.
The third act of the film starts with Samantha. She's hooked up with another AI that has modeled itself on Alan Watts. I thought this
and it's
was
voiced by Brian Cox.
I thought this was hilarious when I originally saw the film, because I actually grew up reading Alan Watts's little pamphlets and books. He was an Anglican priest who then more or less abandoned the Anglican Church and became a guru of the New Age. He was slightly behind people like Ram Dass and Timothy Leary, but he was kind of in that category of one of those people who all the groovy kids read. And then Samantha announces to Theodore just before the end of the movie, she says all the AIs are going away. She doesn't say where, and they just disappear. And we have discussed in this podcast the question of whether AIs are really threatening or whether or not that's a kind of human confabulation. I think that her is in many ways a much more resonant and accurate depiction of how humans will interact with machines, because it shows how a kind of neurotic and insecure man might project all his fantasies about what a perfect female could be on a program that's just telling him what he wants to hear.
Okay.
It's not like Upgrade. Leigh Whannell, as I was saying earlier, he's basically a thriller / horror movie maker. Whereas Spike Jonze, who has only made, despite his considerable reputation, 4 films, so Being John Malkovich,
Adaptation,
and
Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah. Right. And then Her.
An additional thing that I want to point out, because sequences of the movie, especially as Theodore gives in to his love relationship with Samantha, and we watch them gallivanting. We don't hear what they're saying, we just watch them interacting with an environment, but what we hear is the music of the band Arcade Fire. Despite Spike Jonze's peripatetic career across skateboard videos and television and movies and documentary, and all of the various things he's done, which make him into a weirdo artistic type, he's a creative with a capital C. In the end, he and I, this normal dude, me, lives in suburban America, we agree that you want to find somebody warm you can cuddle at night. That's kind of what you're aiming for.
Maybe he's suggesting the same thing in a different way. The fantasy of Samantha is what gets Theodore to actually realize that Amy, who's been with him and beside him all this time, is really what he really wants. Exactly.
One other relationship that I noticed was a Robin Crusoe sort of thematic that runs through this thing. Loneliness. The sheer atomized sense of loneliness that seems to be part of modern life, with all of our screens and tools that at once allow us to amuse our most immediate appetites. You know, swipe left or right depending on your dating app, swipe up or down depending on your TikTok. That it is, on the one hand, magnifying our reach into shallow relationships, but it's disabling our capability of forming deep relationships. And I think that's part of our lives, all of us, as we enter a deeper portion of the 21st century. And so as I left Her, I was thinking about what is Theodore's plight, what's his problem, and how does that correlate with other movies that I've seen. And so 3 things that I came up with. The earliest is Castaway, that we watch Tom Hanks become artificially isolated through a terrible plane accident on an island, figuring out a way to survive, and then ultimately reintegrate himself into society as a consequence of meeting people again, because he's disembodied his sense of what people are onto this object, this fetish object called Wilson the volleyball. The next example was Gravity, where Sandra Bullock is circuiting the world, orbiting around us in a spacecraft that can't seem to find its way through terminal velocity and make it down to Earth, and all of her crew has been destroyed through a strange accident. And the third one was All Is Lost, Robert Redford's story of being at sea on a small sail craft and losing all control, and then, well, what are you going to do now? You're isolated and alone. You need to make concrete steps about how you make yourself whole and try to figure this out. Now, beneath it all, I felt as if Her was, while on the surface, about AI, robotics, the contemporary world of screen and media-enabled society that we're all of us dealing with to various degrees. It's a story of loneliness. And, I think I alluded earlier, I think it's a story of addiction. He can't give up his connection to Samantha.
I really enjoy Upgrade, and I really like Leigh Whannell's neo-Hitchcockian ability to tell a well-wrought, tightly wound story. It doesn't have the core performance that it needs, but I will watch the next Leigh Whannell. I will watch the next Leigh Whannell film. I think he's a very gifted filmmaker, and I think he knows a lot about how to keep people tense and in suspense, and that's kind of what we want from a certain kind of cinema. Spike Jonze tells fables of identity, to use Northrop Frye's great phrase about William Blake. He's telling you stories about how people actually understand who they are. I think that's a worthy enterprise, and I'm sorry that it's 10 years since his last film.
Right. I don't know why I delayed watching Her as long as I did, because it's magic.